Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 160 of my modded Factorio playthrough. In this episode, we are going to test our farms to see how they work, and then we're going to start planning for ways of making more silicon. Enjoy. But that grows pretty fast with all those upgrades. And it's going to pump out the output and the seeds. Seeds go in there and then get sent back. And the output goes down. Now, because the seed generation happens at the seed extractor, not at the farm, it means that it's actually going to take quite some time for this thing to generate enough seeds. Because of that, probably should disable these inserters so they're not fighting. And also unhook that so every single available seed can make it in here. So we are quite short. I don't know if we had any. Looks like we do have some extra ones in there. So I want to go back and grab them just so the process happens quicker. I suppose we could be using the seed generators to generate extra seeds so this initial growing process happens faster, but I don't really see the need for that because once you have the bare minimum amount of seeds, it will start growing. So I'll just grab every available seed we have for now. Because we need this system generating seeds. Luckily, it's pretty fast. So we don't quite have enough seeds yet for that one farm to go at full blast. That's a cool graphic. I guess we're growing leaves, basically. Leaves with magic dust on them. I'll unhook all of these inserters for now. Because we kind of want to just let this process run a bit and build up a collection of seeds. But like with gardens, it's probably going to be too slow to just sit here and watch it. Just have to know that over time it will be adding more and more seeds to the process. And we'll kind of have to come back here and babysit it and hook up more and more machines as it gains more and more seeds. So in that sense, probably should set this number like really high. So let's just do like 20,000 for now. We don't need that many seeds. It's just, I guess another thing we can do is just turn the inserter sideways so it's not actually picking up out of that box. And let that run a while, build up some seeds, and then when we have enough to put through more machines, we can hook up more and see how much it can take. Nonetheless, we are building a little bit of Nexaflex, but without a large enough number to actually see how the whole process runs, there's kind of no point. Because we kind of want to stress test this at full power since we have so many belts going on. What's this thing doing here? Like, could do a rate calculator. Because we know that there is a 5% chance of getting an extra seed for every 5 seeds processed. In other words, every seed produces a 1% chance of getting more seeds. So, if every minute this thing is producing 20 seeds, and that's 20% chance of getting a seed. So presumably that's 1 seed every 5 minutes. If I'm looking at that right. Well, I suppose another solution is just to let this number get really high. I know it's only set to 1,000. But if we set it to something like 10,000, we might be able to test it. Seed production is continuing. Looks like we basically have enough for the one farm to run continuously. But we've got our 10k of resources, and there's seeds that are not getting used, so that's not good. Definitely want to keep using them, but we'll have to kind of keep an eye on that as time goes by. But we've got enough to start the process here, so this should be a good performance test, and looks like these aren't set correctly. That's got to be Nexaflax only, which means there were some seeds that were still in there. But we hook all this up and see what happens. Seems pretty good. It's pumping out a ton of dust. And then there's all of our leaves that are collecting. Seems like the inserters aren't fast enough. There we go, we got lots of green there now. Building up tons of dust. Tons of leaves. How are we doing with all of the seeds? Looks like we don't quite have a surplus yet, but we're getting there. I mean, actually we kind of do. They're starting to pile up. But once there's a pileup of seeds maybe to right here, I'm going to hook up the second farm. But this seems pretty good. The dust will keep collecting. So let's see if it makes nutrient pulp all right. The recipe was not set. That's going to run as fast as it can, but then fill up quite quickly. Meanwhile, this is filling up with all these leaves. It's definitely kind of not the way we want, where there should probably be some limiters here as well. So these limiters should probably be set to a similar number, like 1,000 or something. Although we want the dust, kind of the purpose is to make the leaves. So if leaves are under 1,000, it can turn on. But we want to keep this running as long as possible, so we're making seeds as long as possible. Well, we've got our dust that we can now connect, because once we've got that connected, we'll be able to send up a train with more resources. So this belt technically needs to be more than 30, because we need 33 crystal dust, but I don't want to do 2 belts just for that, so I'll just leave the 1 belt. And let's see, we'll send the dust straight down. And just jump over all these machines. You can grab some more belts and then fix the error with the logic of the geode crushers, and then send the train up here and hopefully consume all that nutrient pulp and see how the system works. Okay, let's fix the logic error, where what I had done is increase this to 10,000 to give dust a higher buffer for the purposes of making these crystal catalysts, but I just left this limited. And there's really no reason at all for this to be limited. We're not using these geodes for anything, so we basically want to crush every available geode. So there's no point in a limiter being on there. So now that we do that, it's starting to crush through all of its numbers. And this will eventually hit 10,000, and then it will start producing dust again. So because that's fixed and I want to see how this process runs, let's use the train filled as it is and see what that does to our new farm. Besides, we do need more modules for the science setup, so we kind of do want to jumpstart this process again. And the logic for here will be the dust has to be under 1,000 before it'll start helping out. Let's let that run for now and empty out. I put priority in here to go down first, because it's more important to process the crystals that we have rather than make more that we can't process. So now that that gets here, the existing crystals are being processed again. And the leftovers are going to making more. It looks like the dust ran out that we produced. So let's let this hook up. And then the aquariums are starting again, which is starting to consume nutrient pulp from the trains. I kind of want to set this to basically the maximum size of the warehouse. About 50,000 or so. We don't need that much, but I want this to run as long as it possibly can, making seeds. And because of that, probably should let this run as long as it possibly can too. So let's say 100,000 for this. And then once the seeds have collected, then we can set those to reasonable numbers again. Man, look how fast it drains through. So silicon and carbon. Well, I'm worried for what that's going to do to the bus. Anytime silicon is consumed, it's always kind of worrisome, because we can't efficiently produce it. But the most efficient way of making silicon produces tons of tin, which is kind of the problem the factory runs into, where it fills up on tin, and then the next best way makes a ton of nickel. The tin is easy enough to get rid of, but nickel makes it much harder. We have to do some military research or something to use it up. But we'll let it take its course and see what happens. We might be able to put a second belt in here. Doesn't have to come all the way from the train, but it could be right here, just to help out get full levels of production out of this. As far as it can anyway, because it's going to quickly run out of dust there. Meanwhile, we cut up on dust, and it sent the extra dust down to the train. It's not a full train's worth, but we'll send it down just to get every last little crystal we can. I wonder how many seeds each farm holds. But regardless, it's not doing any good having seeds sitting in here not getting produced. So let's equalize these and get 2 of them running. And how come these aren't running? Because it's below the 40,000 set point. Ah, it's if greater than. Well, that's wrong. There we go. Well, now that should annihilate all of that extra leaves. Because you see it takes 4 belts of it. And it's barely producing anything. I mean, this level is going up, but it's not particularly fast. Because leaves are like the worst thing to make nutrient pulp out of. But that's fine because we're here for the dust. And we caught up on the nutrient pulp. Well, we do want this process to continue. So we'll put a pump in here with some logic. These ones are set to 40. This one should probably be set to like 10. Start emptying that train. Meanwhile, these farms are starting to collect seeds again. We might be at that point of exponential growth, and seeds aren't helping anything if they're stuck inside farms. So we'll extend that to the next set. Silicon production is continuing, but it looks like we maxed out on tin again. So now nickel is creeping up. Alright, the crystal train just filled up. It's on its way to hopefully start up module production again. The growing of seeds is continuing. It's a slow process, unfortunately, but we'll just have to leave it as is, partially hooked up, and let it collect seeds and come back and check later. But it's working in this limited capacity, at least. At least it's producing some nutrient pulp, and it's producing some dust. So that's probably the most we can hope for, just that it does something. But we got some extra resources here that we need to get rid of. So far we don't have any extra seeds to send down, but we need to prepare for it nonetheless. So this is where compost is primarily being generated. This is a perfect place to dump stuff. And we can have a composter here with an inserter going in, and hopefully that should handle any random stuff that we put in there. Alright, let's try stack inserters. And this will be a good way for us to just dump whatever we got. Looks like beans cannot be processed. But luckily beans are an output of Benefran, so we can just kind of throw the beans in there. And the rest of that should be processed in time. Actually, some speed modules would be nice on here. Then we can do a request depot, requesting those Nexaflax seeds. And we'll put one drone in there. They can have its own composter with another belt just going in here. That's a little messy, but that gets the job done. So what other resources might we need? Well, we need that naphtha. Is there oil nearby? Oh, there's very much oil nearby. Look at all of that. There's oil everywhere. So that won't need to be on a drone. That can be produced locally. We just want to make sure that we have a potential output for all of these resources, or input. So it's going to output mineral oil. And this is requesting mineral oil. So I guess it's a good thing we left it here. So any drones that have mineral oil will go straight there. Raw gas we'll have to set up. So let's do that now. So we'll make a raw gas request here. Just kind of slap it in there. And this might be a good time to use the smaller petrochem tank, since the output of this is going to be fairly low. A simple top-up valve should work. Connected right there. And they're right next to each other, so it's a little tricky, but it works. So if we have a tank here with a pump and connect that, it will always get priority. And connect that there. Then any raw gas that's sent here will get priority over what the mining is doing. And we need a drone in there. Although I think we determined that with these faraway bases, we should probably have a couple of drones on each one of these. See, this process is continuing. It's just a very long process to get started, so there's not much to see there. But I figured I should check since we're up here. So oil residuals should still have a place to go. I don't think it was ever changed, so it should still have a request depot, and it does. So any oil residuals will go to where they need to go. Sulfuric water will, because we have a request depot right here asking for it. And then it will try to save it if possible. So we have a fairly large quantity of oxygen gas as an output, probably large enough for a train, and a fairly large amount of sulfur dioxide gas as well, also probably large enough for a train. And we need fuel oil as an input. So we have a request depot here, but actually what we need is a supply depot, and we don't want to put two of them next to each other and have a looping problem, but I think that isn't really necessary anymore. Because I think the whole point of it was to take the fuel oil from over here, which isn't being produced anymore. So I'm actually okay with picking that up entirely and switching that to a supply depot. Yeah, it wasn't even connected. which is kind of a bit of a problem because the pipes are in the way here. But that will connect, and these longer pipes can go around here. I wonder, could it reach the whole way? Oh, so close, but there we go. Although it actually needs to be a fluid depot. There we go. So that's fuel oil. Sodium hydroxide is on drones. All this other stuff is on trains. So now we just need to do the sulfur dioxide gas and the oxygen. What's funny is that actually we might not need a train at all, because if we just send sulfur up here, we could potentially use up most of that oxygen gas, or all of it. To make a sulfur dioxide gas comes from oxygen and sulfur. And oh yeah, look at that. We can do this in a chemical plant. Since it's plenty fast as is, we'll just put some efficiency modules in there. So we need less than 1 per second of sulfur, which is great. And now we still have a surplus of oxygen, but now it's only 12.5, which is in the range of what a drone can do. So we just saved ourselves a train by doing that. But we do have to put oxygen in, because I don't think we have any oxygen requests. So we can do request depot, asking for oxygen, and we'll put 5 drones in there. Because we made some silicon requests, we are now, same story, out of silicon, and maxed out on nickel and tin. Well, not much we can do about the tin. But the nickel we can certainly make disappear by doing some military research. How about the flamethrower, since we are just kind of working on fuel oil and naphtha, so it's on the same vein. It's just basic stuff that we can make. So we'll grab it, but specifically kind of the reason why I wanted to grab the flamethrower is that when we unlock a new weapon type, we have more damage upgrades to do. And all of that will consume lots of nickel. So we'll do that and see how it works, and visit it again if we need to research something else. Because we definitely need silicon. Oh, one other thing that we need to set up is the gas condensates. We'll remove this request entirely because we don't need it anymore. I'll leave the barreling pump there because why not? We might want to request some other random thing in the future. Plus, this belt is already here. But while we're here, we can pick up all of these barrels and just take them with us. I mean, we could make a drone request for all of those and whatnot, but it's kind of easier just to pick them up by hand since there's not that many of them. And if we got them all, when we hover over here, it shows no more barrels. So we've got them. And for now, we'll need to put these barrels somewhere. Let's just plop them there. Because they're kind of big, take up a lot of space. I don't want to be carrying them around everywhere. And I'll just let these warehouses fill completely up. It's really not that many resources. It's just, like when they're actually processed, they don't take up that much space anymore. They're just leaves, basically. So we want to let that run as long as possible, so we get as many seeds as possible before it shuts down. So we're just about at the point where we can start building blue science. But one concern I have is that we're not really consuming our Invar plates quite fast enough. Of course, that always seems to be the case. But we have a critical shortage of silicon here, and we've been dealing with it and making it work, but I think the problem is going to go into overdrive here when we're making blue science, because you see it has an input requirement of 35 glass. Now, even this setup in its ideal form couldn't make 35 glass a second, but I have the feeling we won't be anywhere close to that. So this whole setup is going to be speed limited on a tiny amount of silicon, basically. And the problem is when you're doing blue science, you're not necessarily doing military research to clear up the space. So for this setup to run with any sort of efficiency, we are going to have to do advanced ore refining, which unlocks the next tier of machines. I've been wanting to put it off because most of these resources aren't on the bus, and since we're going to rebuild the bus once we have blue science, I didn't want to go through the effort of moving these resources around. But I don't think we have a choice, because handcrafting these machines will take forever. These input requirements are very high, so you don't have to build very many of them to run out of resources. So we're going to have to try to put them on the bus a little bit here. But it unlocks the sorting methods to directly create all of the resources that we're using now. This time it will be with ore chunks instead of crushed ore, and requiring the crystal catalyst to make happen. So the requirements are a little higher, but it's also a rarer resource. But otherwise the numbers are the same, where it's 2 chunks of one, 2 chunks of another, and a catalyst, and you get 4 ores out of it. So we get silicon from rubite and bombonium, nickel from sapphirite and rubite, aluminum from givelite and crotinium, zinc from givelite and bombonium, silver from stearite and bombonium. And fluorite is the interesting one, where it's ferrous powder and givelite chunks, which does give us those 2 fluorite ores. And that's a way to generate fluorite, if that's something that you need. But that's not something that we really need. You see, the warehouse is actually overfilled right now. But I think that's just because of the buffers that are being held in the various water treatment plants, and that whenever this turns on, it just sends a bunch down. But it's not clogged here, which is the important thing. But as you see, we have no shortage of fluorite, so I don't see the need to kind of add that to the bus right now and just add more complications. So we want to hit that, and we'll change positions here with this other research, just to get it done first. And now we need to get those resources on a network so we can get them down here. The best way of doing anything temporary is with transport drones, because they're kind of temporary and kind of permanent in how they operate. So you can just pick a spot and implement them. So we need these concrete bricks, and unfortunately the space is a little tight here. So we're going to have to be a little weird about it to make it all fit. But it does. And we'll set a limit on this. It seems like most of these buildings have a limit of around 10,000. So we can set that there. We've got to go all the way out here to get aluminum. And if we wanted to do it symmetrically with how everything else is being done, it's being pulled off here. But you see that road is all the way out there. And we got a road right here. So let's just use the road we've got. And we can kind of pull it off of this one right here. Quick and easy. Maybe in the future we can move that belt around if the road actually makes it out there. But that would also kind of involve connecting the road here so it creates a loop, and with this depot in the way, it's a little inconvenient. But I kind of want to get this set up quickly rather than taking forever, because we have new science to make. I don't want to get too distracted with any big projects, because it's likely that our priorities will change once we have blue science. And I did make an invar request, but I also kind of want to keep the research going, at least to try to unclog the silicon. But we can also do the pestilence spreader. It's kind of the same thing. It's a flamethrower, but with biological weaponry. And specifically, I like to grab it because now we have damage upgrades, which is going to consume a ton of packs. And the easy way here to get these circuit boards is just to continue the line and go all the way out to the road. And we need the same condition, let's say 10,000. And we need to build these things. There's kind of no point to sending these resources to the very beginning of the bus back here, because we don't need them up until this point. Plus, I kind of don't want to build a bunch of new stuff with these resources. So I'm just going to patch it on the end here and hopefully don't regret that. But we need to make the ore sorting facility. We'll just make it with one machine. And it requires an inputs of these other things. These can come in on drone. The sorting facility 2 can come in via robot from the other location it's being made. So the only thing we need to worry about are the gear wheels, which we can produce here. And now we have a weird ratio, but in part that's because it put the productivity modules in. So might want to default it to not having any. So you see we need 2.4 machines, and that's weird. So if we add a speed, it does fit. And add a productivity, and it still fits. So now we can do one machine flanking each side, and then in the middle will be the actual assembly machine doing most of the work. So it'll be some belts coming in, kind of the machines here, probably more belts, and then the outputs will be over here. So now we kind of know where we need our inputs to be, so we can send these up, because I want to make these requests as soon as possible, because it's going to take forever for them to get here. Looks like we have a power pole in the way, and we're going to need a ton of drones for this. Well, 60 sounds good, because I think that typically when we have far away locations, we use 20 drones per depot, and that seems to have worked pretty well so far. So we'll put some depots here, one requesting aluminum, 20 drones, one requesting bricks, 20 drones, and one requesting the circuit boards, 20 drones. And I just noticed I put these on backwards. It's kind of frustrating that they can't be turned. So if you make the mistake of putting them on backwards, well, you got to do it all over again. But there we go. Then we have our outputs. And they kind of need to be combined here. And that should get the resources down to where they need to go. The output will go in there. And we can limit it to, say, 100 machines. Then we need to get the input in here. And probably the best way for sending complicated resources is with cargo robots. And we have a depot right here, which is super convenient. So we need a requester. Plop it right in there. Requesting, let's say, 100 of tier 2s. Then we need to connect it. We researched the medium logistic expanders, which are larger buildings. They're 2x2 buildings instead of 1x1s. But their supply area is twice as big. So it's rather nice. So you can see how it's actually pretty decent. So they're quite useful. We want to connect it to the other one. And then we need to get all the way down here. They are a little larger, so crashing into them is going to be a little bit more of a problem. But what can you do? Okay, we're getting close here. Looks like we need one more expander and a provider chest. Let's turn this inserter sideways so we can pick that up. Put the provider in there. And let's set a limit to 100 should be okay. Put them back in there. And then connect the logistics. And there we go. And there goes the cargo robot very slowly. And that's the end of this episode. On the next one, we're going to upgrade our ore sorting setup to use crystal catalyst for more efficient ore production. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.